In this video, I want to talk about some of the things that came up in workshop the other day. I've been meaning to get to this video, and it's been several days now. So one of the questions that came up was how to hear from your inner child when you're feeling disconnect. Like when you're feeling like you can't access the voice of that child, the feelings of that child, like you're just not connecting and they're feeling inaccessible. The example that I gave is if you met a child who had been in foster care and they had experienced abandonment and abuse, and you're asking them, how are they feeling? They're going to be like, I don't know how I'm feeling. I've just been trying to survive. I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't even know what that is. What is a feeling? And that's very similar to the way that many of you feel when you first start doing this work. I know that was my feeling. I mean, I haven't been allowed to feel. I've just been trying to survive. I've been trying to dodge, the things that I've been experiencing. What in the world is that? And in fact, I remember even being in my 20s and I had gone through a really painful breakup, and I had been talking with someone who said to me, I was like desperate and saying like, what do? I don't know what I'm supposed to do right now. And she said to me, I think you're supposed to feel the feelings. Actually, I think I might have even been in my 30s, like early 30s, because I was in graduate school. And that was really ironic because I was in graduate school, okay, in psychology. And I'm like, what the heck does that mean? What do you mean feel my feelings? I've been trying to avoid those my whole life. Okay, so that's where many of us are when we start doing this work, is like, I've just been trying to squelch my feelings and try to be rational, right? And the more you try to do that, the crazier you are. And there's good reason for that. God designed you with feelings. Your feelings are information. Your feelings are not something to overcome. So you're going to need to develop a repertoire for sharing your feelings. And one of the things that I recommend is that you step back. When you notice that kid inside of you is like, I don't know what this is, and I don't really want anything to do with it, and I feel scared, you're getting that resistance from them, or you're getting a total shutdown, like a stonewalling, you need to step back. Anytime that you're starting to feel a block, you need to step back and you need to ask, how is your child feeling about doing the thing you're asking them to do, which is sharing your feelings? How are you feeling about sharing your feelings? You see what I'm saying? I notice that you're not there right now. So let's talk about how you're feeling about that. And one of the tendencies we have is like, well, I want to get to the point. I want to get to the meat and potatoes. I want to understand like what's going on. And so we start pushing that kid. We start pushing them, and they don't feel safe, and they dig their heels in even more because we're not being a safe person. At that point, what we're doing is we're using them to try to get information rather than being in a relationship with them and honoring the feelings that they're having. And I want you to understand something, that sometimes we have it in our heads that we need to get that information out, but sometimes that's more important than even the question that we've been asking them. Sometimes it's more important to just back up and say, how are you feeling about talking about how you're feeling? And you know what that would tell another child? Like if you externalize this, right? Or if you look at a situation with an actual child, what that is communicating is that you're tracking with them, that you actually care enough to notice that they're not feeling comfortable right now, that they're not feeling safe, and that they're not a machine. Another thing that you can do to help connect with that child is to have a picture of yourself as a child and to connect with that picture. Find a picture of yourself in which you remember and you can connect with that child. Start there. And then maybe you can make yourself an album. Then you can increase. Another thing that you can do is do mirror work. Look into your eyes. You don't need to look into your entire face. You're not having a relationship with your body, but the eyes are the window to the soul. Jesus says the eyes are the lamp to the body. And they're telling you about the light that's inside of you, whether that light is of him or it is darkness of the devil. So there is a way in which you can connect with the soul. You can examine what's going on. Personally, the way that I can, from personal experience, what I can tell you is when I've done mirror work, I've been able to see in my eyes what it is that I'm feeling, a different aspect of what it is that I'm feeling. Sometimes you can look into someone's eyes, someone who you're attuned with, and you can understand, whether they're feeling sorrow or they're feeling joy. So now that's another way to connect with your inner child. Another thing that you can do is take yourself to that age and put yourself in that moment and age, the feelings, the memories, all of it. Another thing that you can do is if you start to feel like you're getting stuck or overwhelmed, give yourself a break, go on a walk, do something like that, but commit to coming back. So before you start your work, you're disciplining your body, your flesh, your mind and body. So you discipline before to get into the heart and spirit. But if you find that you're really getting to a deep root, something that is overwhelming, something where you're starting to notice that you're feeling stuck, go on a walk. Don't do it in order to distract yourself. Understand that what you're doing is you're regulating yourself, you're soothing yourself by disciplining your mind and body. A lot of times we're so used to distracting ourselves from feeling bad feelings that, someone actually was sharing in workshop the other day a version of this of, well, I feel better when I go on a walk, but then I come back and I'm still stuck. If you're still stuck after you go on a walk, then what you might be doing is using going on a walk to distract yourself. Kind of like when a child is going through something and the parent says, oh, don't think about that. Let's go get an ice cream, right? So now the ice cream becomes the soothing mechanism, but it's actually just a distraction from dealing with anything that you're feeling. You need to actually be intentional about what you're doing. So if you're going on a walk, then intentionally bring yourself down, bring your body arousal down, bring your mind and heart into a position of discipline, of soothing, rather than just trying to distract. Another thing that you need to remember when you're doing this work is that Satan is involved. And so if you are digging out a deep root, for example, he's right there. And he's going to start trying to jack up your flesh and freak you out and overwhelm you. But you need to remember that there is nowhere that Satan is where God is not also. Where God is not infinitely more powerful than Satan is. Satan's not allowed to do anything without God's permission. So that means that God is using everything for his purpose. He's using it to test you. Satan is trying to tempt you. God is testing you. If you remember that, then you don't turn to Satan, you turn to God. Then you remind yourself in those moments that God is doing something. And then you turn to him and you don't let Satan get the best of you. If you're finding that difficult, if you're finding that you just cannot discipline your flesh and you just feel compelled all the time, you need to do a fast, because that is an indication that you have a spirit. That is an indication that you need to return to God so that he will cast that out and he will restore you in his spirit of peace so that you can do this work effectively. And what I mean when I say that you need to fast is you need to remove all of the idols that you are placing before God, and you need to truly return to him for 3 days. Set a time window by which you can eat. Mine is usually 12 to 4, and I don't gorge myself. I eat something simple like a pot of soup. The rest of the time I'm fasting, but I am with him for those 3 days. No computer, no phone, except for the things that, if I need them for a given amount of time, but I put strict restrictions on it. And I remain in his word, in his spirit, and I journal and I commune with him. All day long, I just commune with him. And if you're not necessarily hearing from him in the moment, then do your journal work. Do the work that you need to do. He's going to show up when you've done the work you need to do. Another thing that someone shared during the meeting is that something that was a game changer for them was rather than using they or you, like when they were talking with their child, oh, that must have been really hard for you, or externalizing the inner child process. Once they started to understand their inner child as a we, like the inner parent is coming alongside the child. It's not that they weren't there when they were experiencing these things. It's that now they're available to help the child to process through what they're feeling now and what they were feeling back then. And your language should reflect that. You shouldn't be feeling separate from your inner child. Your language should reflect that you're in this with them now and that you were there with them then. You just didn't have this developed inner parent part of you. So as you're talking with your inner child, be sure to use language that is reflective, that we were really suffering at that time. It was really tough, wasn't it? Do you want to tell me how you were feeling at that time? Yes, that was really hard on us. Let me share with you what I understand now. Okay, so you're alongside the child. You're not speaking at them or separate from them. Remember that you're developing a repertoire from what you were longing to have, not necessarily because you got what you needed. Because if you got what you needed, you probably wouldn't have the issues that you're having right now. And you don't need to think that you're so unique either because you have these feelings, because everyone on this planet is feeling this way at this point in history. There have not been good, worthy shepherds. That includes in parents. There has been so much woundedness as a result of the increase in wickedness. So no one's getting what they need. I'm sure if you look at your parents, they didn't get what they needed either. So a lot of times what I hear from people, they want to tell me the story about why it is that they are the way that they are. Guess what? We've all got our story about why we are the way that we are. What we're doing now is developing a repertoire from what we were longing to have. So you're going to need to pull that up out of your inner child. You're going to need to ask them, how were you feeling? And you're going to need to assess, now, what have I been longing for and what do I need to give my inner child? And that might take a minute, and it might be a source of frustration for you that, you don't necessarily have that repertoire inside of you. But I want you to know that's a frustration for all of us. None of us have the repertoire until we do. The other thing that I want to make sure that you understand is that you're going to have to keep going deeper. Every single week in workshop, I'm asking people now, do you know what your work is? Do you know what you're doing this week? None of us ever arrive. I have not arrived, but God keeps taking me deeper and deeper in the work, deeper and deeper to understanding my personal accountability and my sin so that I can relate with Him correctly. So there's that deeper and deeper from week to week as we're working in workshop, but there's also the deeper and deeper in your work. One of the things that I have recommended to you guys is that when you think that you've gotten to that place, ask your child 3 more times, now how do you feel? And then let them talk a little bit. And then when you think you've gotten there, ask them a second time, now how are you feeling? Let them talk. And then ask them a third time, now how are you feeling? Make sure that you go deep enough. Another thing that I want to mention is that someone had brought up the topic of she was feeling anger. And she went to do the work, but she felt that she was just venting at her anger, that she was just in her flesh. And she felt like that was counterproductive, like she couldn't sit and address what was going on. There are some of us who are used to being very contained and restrained. There are others of us, like myself. Listen, I spent a long time being contained and restrained, and then I went to the other end of the spectrum where I was like, I'm never going to be silenced again. And then I was inappropriately, outwardly angry. Whatever your situation is, they're both the same thing. Even though those who are contained and restrained usually look at those who are outwardly angry and say, ugh, what's wrong with you? But then a lot of times those are the people who just like bolt or cut people off. They're both wrong and they're both equally destructive. What needs to happen is that we need to provide a place for the child to process their feelings. It's okay to let your child vent a little bit, but then you start to bring them into the feeling part. A child is going to give you raw emotion. I'm mad. They might kick something or throw something. That's raw. Let them feel their feelings. And then you gently bring them into a place in which they can process their feelings. But initially, it may be difficult for them to just jump into processing their feelings. They may need to vent a little bit in order to get to that place. Now, I want to be careful about this because you don't want to stay in that venting place, but you also don't want to cut your kid off. So how would you do this with a human child who's upset? You would give them a hug. You would embrace them. You would say that really hurt your feelings, what they did. Yeah, and I'm mad, and I wanted to play with them, and they did this, and it was mean. And then you just keep reflecting, and you keep soothing them to a place where they can finally articulate what it is that they're really feeling. Sometimes people who are very contained and restrained, they are very appropriate. They do the right thing, but they shut down their own feelings. And so they're really suffering in silence. You got to let your child vent. You got to let your child express what they're feeling. However they're expressing it, it's the parent that's going to shape. But the child needs to be able to speak what they're feeling as it comes out. Don't let those old rules and ideas that it's inappropriate for the child to express. No, it's appropriate for the child to express within that relationship. It would not be appropriate for you to say, just go off on someone. But within personal relationship, it's totally appropriate. And it is 100% productive. Another thing that I want to remind you is don't try to control the work or your memories. Let them come up naturally, but also ask, is this connected to anything? So sometimes people will try to dig up stuff, or even to the extent that they'll be like, well, I don't know, something's got to be, I know there's just got to be something that's wrong. Maybe I was sexually abused, right? Like that happens a lot in therapy, actually. And if you have a therapist who doesn't do their own work, which most of the time you do, that can get really dangerous. There's a good reason why there are false memories that are studied as a result of lunatic therapists who indulge and don't put the kibosh on that. I mean, like if you have someone telling you, I think I might have been sexually abused, I just feel like there's something more, you don't need to dig that up. God will bring that up if that's what happened. And so things end up getting fabricated and people get reinforced. What do you see going on right now? You see a bunch of demonic, well, I think maybe I am a boy. Oh, well, let's explore that. Let's just jump on that bandwagon. Let's indulge that and feed it. Maybe you are a boy. You see what I'm talking about? The same strategies have been used with trauma, and including trauma that never existed. It's absolutely satanic. God is going to bring up what needs to come up. Don't go digging, but let it come up naturally. Also, don't start stuffing it down. But you don't need to go digging for something. I hope these suggestions have helped. Feel free to ask your questions. I know that a lot of you are working out of Heart Known series, and if you're not doing the workshop, I feel such concern because I know that you really do need the support. So if you're not able to do the workshop on Monday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, send me messages, ask your questions, do what you can to attend that workshop because it is very important. But one thing I will say is if you're going to attend the workshop, it needs to be a regular thing. Otherwise, it's not fair to everyone else in the workshop who's, they're on a certain rhythm of growth and in the way that we do things in workshop. It would not be fair to anyone if someone was popping in and out at their leisure. So if you're going to do it, make it a priority. Otherwise, feel free to send me messages and ask me questions, and I will do my very best to answer them. Thank you for listening.